Yes, good morning. Look, my name is Simon Lill. I am Chairman of Nimy Resources Limited, amongst other activities. Nimy is a new listing on the ASX. We listed back in November of 2021. We've been quite active in an exploration sense since then. We are pursuing nickel in what we are describing as a new nickel sulfide district. We've had a lot of very good background information to date on the potential for nickel to be discovered in this region, and we will go through that over the next few slides. If we flick through, so there is a standard disclaimer, and you can read that in your at your leisure. But if you go to the main investment summary, you can see that we have a large land holding, 2,500 square kilometres or thereabouts. We're in the Yilgarn Craton. We're calling it the Karoon Hill Belt. You can see it's running fairly parallel to the Cambolda Belt. And the belt, our tenement area, is to the north of the Forrestania Belt, on the same geological structure as Forrestania to the south, and you and me to the north, up near Mount Magnet there. So we have good progeny in that sense. So we're claiming it's the northern extension of the Forrestania Belt, and as you can see, it's some 370 kilometres to the northeast of Perth. Now, the project has been put together by one of my directorial colleagues, Luke Hampson, and he has focused a lot on his original tenement package. So he's identified over 30 targets in 6 zones. The reality is we're going to have a lot more targets because we have added to that package over the last 12 months. I think it was originally about 500 square kilometres, and as you can see now, we're at 2,500 square kilometres. There is always an argument, of course, that there's not a lot of point adding a whole lot of tenements if they're moose pastures, but we have followed structures along the lines and have particularly grabbed some of the tenements that we have for particular reasons, and we're now receiving some approaches from joint venture purposes, and there are some other tenements being picked up in the region. So the significant pipeline of targets, 30 targets in 6 zones, there is a certain level of historical in that. There will be plenty more targets once we actually start doing the early work on some of the targets. We're quite comfortable in the area that we have obtained. I always tell the story that I recall a metallurgical friend of mine saying, Simon, if it's underexplored, there's no mineralisation there. And what he is suggesting in that sense is that the old timers would have found it if there was anything worth finding. Well, since we've been involved there, we have uncovered that we're on Greenstone Belt, the mafic ultramafic sequences of Greenstone Belt. We're in the Yilgarn Craton, so the same age rocks as what we might see out in the Cambolda Belt. We've discovered a gossan, and I'll talk a bit more about gossans in a little while, but there are all the hallmarks of this being a mineralised belt. We just need to find the areas of mineralisation, and I always use the reason that my background, I'm chairman of De Grey Mining. De Grey has one of the world's largest gold discoveries up in the Pilbara. We're not here to talk about De Grey, but the point being that at the time and prior to the discovery, we used to run into every broker in town would say, you won't find any gold up in the Pilbara. There's no gold in the Pilbara. And we have proven that, demonstrably have proven that incorrect. Shortly after our key discovery, Chalice discovered Julimar closer to Perth, in an area that people would not have thought was going to find mineralisation either. And that has been a major discovery. And then Western Australia has also been blessed with the Irahidi lead zinc discovery in an area that people may not have expected to have found that sort of mineralisation as well. So WA in the last 3 years has had 3 major discoveries in regions where there's been plenty of time for the old timers to pick over them, and plenty of naysayers about them. So we can see no real reason. In fact, we'd be surprised if there was not a discovery of some significance in our project area. I will say we are targeting nickel. That does not mean that we will come across other commodities. We're saying it's a nickel copper province, but we have seen obviously indications of gold, given that we're south of the Nimy mine. There is potential for lithium that we've identified on the project. We have in our tenement package, there's a little square to the west which we have picked up, which is appears to be a carbonatite, and the famous carbonatite in Western Australia is Mount World. So potential for rare earths and other metals within that carbonatite once we start looking there as well. So we are looking for nickel, but we'd be surprised if we don't find something else. The types of nickel we are looking for, look, everyone's after the higher grade massive sulfide mineralisation. We're looking at it and saying, well, really, there's three different types that can work for us. We have the high-grade massive sulfide, which is what most of the market looks for, and rightly so. Grade will be king. It's a bit harder to find, and of course, it often happens at depth as well. So we're looking for that, and this slide 2 on my presentation here is showing that we've recently drilled into a gossan that we discovered when we were actually preparing a sump for another drilling program. And gossans are synonymous with nickel discoveries, actually, that the original Cambolda nickel discovery of the Poseidon boom wasn't discovered by gossan, but once they had discovered the nickel and looking around, they found that there were a lot of gossans in the region. Similarly, Forestania was discovered by finding gossans as well. Not every gossan contains nickel, but if there are gossans in the vicinity, it is seen as positive. What we've seen here is the gossan that we drilled, and we've only recently reported these results, does show elevated nickel results from the results that we have previously been reporting. Now, I'm not pretending that the 0.48% itself of nickel that was in that gossan was only 1 metre. That's not an economic mine, but it is an elevated level from the background nickel mineralisation that we have been reporting. So what we're very keen to do is to follow that gossan down, because this rock, it's quite shallow where we have intersected this, so it will be weathered, which will mean that the nickel has been leached out, but it is showing that we're carrying nickel, copper, cobalt in this gossan. Beyond the gossan, and you can see the results there, 6 metres at 0.31%, 4 metres at 0.3%. Beyond the gossan, we get back into the mafic, ultramafic sequences, and we have a further 226 metres at 0.16% nickel. Now, we don't get excited about 0.16%, we understand that, but it does show that we have, and consistently we have shown this sort of size, intersection, and mineralisation across the various zones that we have been drilling. Large, lower grade nickel intersections, very consistent nickel intersections. Often with these nickel intersections too, we are getting high MgO, which is a very strong indicator of komatiite material. So the three types of nickel that we could be chasing, the high grade massive sulfides, which we hope that as we follow the gossan through, that we'll come across some of that material. The komatiite material is similar to what BHP these days, previously Western Mining, are mining at Mount Keith. Now, they've been mining that for some 40 years or so. I understand the rough average grade there is about 0.6%. So komatiites are sort of a lower grade, wider spread material, and they can be very, very economic, as Mount Keith, Yakabindi have shown in the northeastern goldfields of Western Australia. And then, of course, the lower grade nickel. Now, I don't pretend that 0.16% is likely to be economic, but there is a lot of information coming out of Canada, probably mainly, where they are doing feasibility study work on these sorts of grades of nickel, maybe a little bit higher at 0.2%. And I would make the point that in the gold world, where I have a little bit of experience now, the largest Australian gold mine, which is Boddington, is operating at 0.4 grams per tonne. 30 years ago, you would have looked at anything under perhaps 2 grams per tonne. So look at what the story is that we are exploring a very large nickel sulfide system. We have shown consistently that this area is fertile for nickel sulfides. There's a lot of large intersections. Now, you can see a couple on this slide here. 363 metres at 0.14% nickel, 426%, 4 metres at 0.14% nickel. we've just discussed the economic potential of that. But what it does show is there's a really strong background of fertile nickel sulfides. The secret for us is to find where those nickel sulfides have accumulated, where the concentration of them has increased, and where we can get the higher grades that improve the economics. But these sort of results that you can see at Godley have been very, very consistent across a lot of our drilling programs. The second bullet point up there, we did some RC holes prior to the IPO. We encountered significant mineralisation across 16 of those, similar sorts of depths. I mean, they're RCs, they're not going down as deep as these diamond holes that you can see at Godley, but you're still getting the 200 metres at over 0.1% nickel, with indications on the way through of copper, cobalt, etc. So again, a very, very strong background in nickel sulfides. DEIS is the other project that we have been concentrating on. And again, you can see those results there. We've drilled a very deep hole looking for the bedrock, which we didn't find after 871 metres. We were going through a couple of moving loop plates that we had found. So we're still waiting on those assays. But again, look, we're seeing that nickel mineralisation was extensive from 384 metres to end of hole. So there's another, whatever that is, 500 metres of probably similar material to that which we've reported at Godley. So that's still to come, the DEIS the DEIS prospect results there. Moving on to the last slide. Look, the takeaways are we have a large 100% approved tenement package with all heritage agreements in place. A lot of the other exploration peers might be joint ventured or have smaller areas, etc. This is a large area that can be both a positive and a negative. I accept that. But as I say, we are fielding some interest in joint ventures into the area as well, while we focus on zone A, B that you can see in the middle there. We're doing ongoing geophysics across the project, including recently downhole electromagnetic surveys, etc. They're all to be reported. We have shown that we have greenstone belt, that we have komatiites, which is a komatiite flow is a lava flow effectively, which is fertile for nickel sulfides. We've got multiple exploration zones, multiple commodity indications. You can see the carbonatite there that I mentioned earlier in zone F that we've indicated as a little circle there on that square. So we've got some broad-scale regional exploration underway that's been undertaken by our key geologist, Fergus Jockle, who's a very experienced exploration geologist. And one of the things I always like saying, whether it's this company or another company, Fergus loves getting his hands dirty. He's not just sitting in the office looking at screens. He loves getting up to site, getting out there and doing the logging of the core, etc., etc. And he's been around the game for a while, and yet he still loves that. So he's a geologist with a love of geology, which is not always the case, actually. So he's very confident, very excited about the gossans that we have, as have been some of the shareholders that we have, who are perhaps a bit more experienced in the nickel world. And the fact that we have gossans is seen as a very, very strong positive for them. So look, it's an underexplored new greenstone belt. The difficulties for the management of that is that, we're a junior company as well, but we're aware there's quite a few eyes on us at the moment too, and we are starting to feel as though we're understanding what we have a lot better, and that we'll be able to start targeting our drilling a lot better in the next drill program, which we would hope to commence, where are we now, October, sometime during November. We still have the problem in the exploration industry in Australia and Western Australia that assay results are still delayed. So results from the next program probably not out until the new year. But look, that's about all at the moment with the time that I was given for this presentation. And there are the details at the bottom slide. And if you feel that you wish to contact us and ask any further questions, there's an email address there, and the team will happily look after you. So thank you very much for your time.